Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawly, was a name synonymous with both devastating knockouts and unbridled arrogance in the UFC world. His record spoke for itself, a string of victories punctuated by spinning heel kicks, lightning-fast jabs, and an uncanny ability to read his opponents. But it wasn't just his fighting prowess that drew attention. It was his persona. Rex reveled in the spotlight, cultivating an image of a cocky, untouchable superstar. Before each fight, he'd engage in elaborate pre-fight rituals, trash-talking his opponents with carefully crafted insults designed to unnerve them. He'd strut around the octagon like a peacock, preening for the cameras and soaking in the adulation of the crowd. His victories were often followed by boastful celebrations, punctuated by elaborate dances and taunts directed at his fallen adversaries. This carefully constructed persona had earned him a legion of fans who lapped up his every word and move. They loved his swagger, his confidence, and his unwavering belief in his own superiority. But it had also made him a target for rivals eager to knock him off his pedestal. Veteran fighters and rising stars alike yearned for the opportunity to shut him up and expose him as a fraud. Despite the constant pressure and scrutiny, Rex seemed impervious to criticism. He thrived on the attention, both positive and negative, using it as fuel to further his ambitions. He saw himself as a modern-day gladiator, entertaining the masses with his skill and his audacity. His latest victory, a brutal first-round knockout of a highly ranked contender, had cemented his status as one of the biggest draws in the UFC. Riding high on this success, Rex embarked on a promotional tour, traveling the world to promote his brand and further expand his fanbase. It was during this tour that he found himself in London, a city steeped in history and tradition, a city that would soon become the stage for his most humbling experience. Little did he know, his insatiable need for attention and his disdain for anything he perceived as old-fashioned would lead him to a confrontation he would never forget. A confrontation that would challenge his carefully constructed image and expose the vulnerability beneath the bravado. The stage was set for a clash of cultures, a battle of egos, and a lesson in humility that would resonate far beyond the streets of London. London, with its ancient architecture and rigid traditions, was a stark contrast to the glitzy, fast-paced world Rex inhabited. He found the city's reverence for history stifling, its customs antiquated, and its people, well, polite to a fault. The carefully curated chaos of a UFC event, the roar of the crowd, the smell of sweat and anticipation. That was his element. This measured, almost reverent atmosphere felt alien. The promotional tour was proving to be a monotonous string of press conferences, autograph signings, and carefully orchestrated photo opportunities. Rex, accustomed to the adrenaline rush of the octagon, was quickly growing bored. He craved the spotlight, the attention, the opportunity to stir things up. The scripted nature of the tour felt like a cage, confining his restless energy. He voiced his displeasure to his manager, a weary-looking man named Barry who had the unenviable task of keeping Rex in line. "This is killing me, Barry," Rex complained, lounging in his opulent hotel suite overlooking the Thames. "All this, yes, sir. No, sir, crap that I need some action." Barry sighed, rubbing his temples. "Rex, we're here to promote your brand, not start a riot. Just get through the next few days and we can go back to Vegas." "Vegas is boring too," Rex retorted. "I need something unexpected." And that's exactly what he sought out. While the press events bored him to tears, the city itself became his playground. He saw the rigid customs as a challenge, a dare. He began to openly mock the traditions, finding humor in the perceived absurdity of it all. He complained loudly about the tea, the weather, and the general lack of excitement. His entourage, a motley crew of yes-men and hangers-on, egged him on, laughing at his jokes and feeding his ego. It was during a sightseeing tour near Buckingham Palace that Rex found his target. Amidst the throngs of tourists snapping photos, stood a royal guard, a figure of unwavering stoicism and tradition. The guard's iconic bearskin hat and scarlet tunic seemed to Rex like a costume, a relic of a bygone era. A spark of mischief ignited in Rex's eyes. Here was an opportunity to inject some excitement into his day, to shake things up, to prove that even the most rigid traditions could be bent to his will. He announced to his entourage, with a mischievous grin, that he was going to loosen up that guard. The stage was set for a confrontation that would quickly escalate from harmless taunts to a full-blown challenge. a challenge that would ultimately backfire in spectacular fashion. The scene unfolded like a poorly scripted comedy, fueled by Rex's insatiable ego and the silent, unwavering presence of the Royal Guard, the Guard. A young man named Sergeant Alistair Humphrey stood ramrod straight, his face an impassive mask beneath the towering bearskin hat. He was a picture of discipline and tradition, a symbol of British heritage. Rex, on the other hand, was a whirlwind of energy and disrespect. He strutted towards the Guard, his entourage trailing behind him like a flock of eager birds. The growing crowd, initially drawn by Rex's celebrity, began to sense the impending clash. Murmurs rippled through the onlookers, a mixture of amusement and apprehension. "All right, mate," Rex began, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Let's see if we can get a smile out of this guy." He circled the Guard, mimicking his stiff posture and exaggerated movements. "Look at this getup. You look like you're about to invade Poland." His entourage erupted in laughter, their voices echoing through the square. The Guard remained unmoved, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Rex, emboldened by the attention, pressed on. "You know," he continued, "I bet I could knock you out with one punch, even with that ridiculous hat on." He shadowboxed in front of the Guard, throwing a series of jabs and hooks. "What do you say, tough guy? Want to find out?" The crowd's amusement began to wane, replaced by a growing sense of unease. Many felt that Rex was going too far, disrespecting a symbol of national pride. At a few muttered disapproving comments. But Rex, caught up in his own performance, paid them no heed. He reached out and lightly shoved the Guard's shoulder, expecting a reaction. "Come on, buddy," he taunted. "Loosen up a little. Show some personality." Sergeant Humphrey remained steadfast, his expression unchanging. Inside, however, a battle raged. Years of training and discipline warred with the instinct to defend his honor and the reputation of the Royal Guard. He knew that any overt reaction would be a breach of protocol, a stain on the Guard's impeccable record. But the disrespect was becoming increasingly blatant, the taunts increasingly personal. He could feel the eyes of his fellow guardsmen on him, watching from a distance. He knew that they understood the pressure he was under, the difficult position he was in. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of his duty, his oath, his commitment to upholding the traditions of the Royal Guard. He would not be provoked. He would not react. He would remain a symbol of unwavering stoicism, even in the face of such blatant disrespect. But little did Rex know, fate, and a discreet signal from a superior officer, were about to change everything. The initial verbal jabs were relatively harmless, the kind of playful teasing one might expect from a tourist trying to get a rise out of a statue. Rex mimicked the Guard's rigid posture, exaggerating his movements and speaking in a mock British accent. He questioned the practicality of the bearskin hat in the London heat, suggesting it was more suitable for a Russian winter. He even offered the Guard a bottle of water, only to snatch it away at the last moment with a mischievous grin. The early reactions from the crowd were mixed. Some found Rex's antics amusing, chuckling at his jokes and snapping photos of the spectacle. Others were less impressed, viewing his behavior as disrespectful and immature. A few openly criticized him. But Rex, fueled by his ego and the encouragement of his entourage, remained undeterred. He escalated his taunts, moving beyond simple mimicry to more direct insults. He questioned the Guard's manhood, suggesting that he was nothing more than a glorified mannequin. He mocked the Guard's uniform, comparing it to a clown costume. He even went so far as to impersonate a stereotypical British butler, complete with an exaggerated bow and a high-pitched voice. Sergeant Humphrey, throughout it all, remained a picture of stoicism. His face betrayed no emotion, his body no reaction. He stood as if carved from stone, impervious to Rex's insults and provocations. But inside, the pressure was mounting. He could feel the weight of tradition on his shoulders, the responsibility to uphold the dignity of the Royal Guard. He knew that any reaction, no matter how justified, would be met with swift and severe consequences. He had been trained to endure, to remain composed under pressure, to prioritize duty above all else. But as Rex's taunts grew increasingly personal and the crowd's reaction shifted from amusement to disapproval, Sergeant Humphrey began to question whether his silence was truly the best course of action. Was he simply allowing himself to be humiliated in the name of tradition? Was he failing to defend the honor of the Royal Guard? Was he setting a bad example for his fellow guardsmen? These questions swirled in his mind, adding to the internal conflict that raged beneath his stoic exterior. He glanced subtly towards his superior officer, hoping for guidance, for some indication of how to proceed. The officer, recognizing the delicate situation, remained impassive, offering no clear direction. Sergeant Humphrey was on his own, forced to make a decision that could have far-reaching consequences. The tension in the air was palpable, the crowd holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The shove was more of a nudge, a playful gesture intended to provoke a reaction. But it was a line crossed, a physical challenge to the guard's authority. Rex, fueled by adrenaline and the need for attention, seemed oblivious to the growing tension in the air. That he expected a response. A flinch, a word, anything to break the guard's stoic facade. When Sergeant Humphrey remained motionless, Rex's arrogance swelled. He interpreted the lack of reaction as weakness, as proof that the guard was nothing more than a powerless figurehead. He puffed out his chest, reveling in what he perceived as his victory. "See!" Rex exclaimed to the crowd, his voice booming through the square. "I told you he was just a statue. No fight in him at all." His entourage cheered, their laughter echoing through the square. But the laughter was forced, tinged with a hint of nervousness. They sensed that Rex was pushing his luck, that he was on the verge of crossing a line from which there would be no return. Rex, however, was too caught up in the moment to notice the shift in atmosphere. He felt invincible, untouchable. He was Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley, the undisputed king of the UFC, and he could do whatever he wanted. He reached out again, this time, grabbing the brim of the guard's bearskin hat and tilting it back, exposing Sergeant Humphrey's face to the crowd. It was a blatant act of disrespect, a deliberate attempt to humiliate the guard and undermine his authority. "Look at him!" Rex shouted, his voice filled with derision. "He's just a kid. What's he going to do? Call his mommy?" The crowd gasped. This was too much. Even those who had initially found Rex's antics amusing were now disgusted by his behavior. A chorus of boos and jeers erupted from the onlookers, drowning out the laughter of Rex's entourage. Sergeant Humphrey's face remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. He could feel the heat rising in his cheeks, the anger simmering beneath his stoic exterior. He knew that he was close to breaking, that he was on the verge of losing control. He took a deep breath, reminding himself of his training, his duty, his oath. He would not be provoked, he would not react, he would remain a symbol of unwavering stoicism, even in the face of such blatant disrespect. But as Rex continued to taunt him, to mock him, to humiliate him in front of the world, Sergeant Humphrey knew that his resolve was about to be tested in a way he had never imagined. The discreet signal he was about to receive would be the only thing that could save him and possibly Rex himself. "All right, tough guy," Rex announced, his voice laced with condescension. "Let's make this official. That I challenge you to a friendly sparring match." He spread his arms wide, gesturing to the growing crowd. "Right here, right now. Winner takes all. Bragging rights, that is." The crowd gasped. The initial discomfort had morphed into outright disapproval. But this was something else entirely. A challenge to a royal guard, on duty, in front of Buckingham Palace. It was unheard of. Sergeant Humphrey remained silent, his face an unreadable mask, but inside, his mind was racing. The years of training, the countless hours spent honing his skills in close-quarters combat, all screamed for release. He knew he could easily subdue Rex, put an end to this humiliating charade. But the consequences, the potential damage to the reputation of the Royal Guard, it was a risk he couldn't afford to take. He glanced again at his superior officer, his eyes pleading for guidance. The officer, standing a short distance away, remained impassive. But then, a subtle shift. A barely perceptible NODIT was enough. The signal was clear. Resolve the situation, within reasonable bounds, of course. But the message was unmistakable. Sergeant Humphrey was authorized to defend himself, to defend the honor of the Royal Guard. A flicker of emotion crossed his face, a brief but noticeable change that sent a ripple of anticipation through the crowd. Rex, oblivious to the significance of the moment, grinned triumphantly. "What's it going to be, buddy?" he taunted. "Are you going to back down? Or are you going to step up and show me what you've got?" Sergeant Humphrey took a deep breath. Squaring his shoulders, he lowered his gaze for a moment. then looked Rex directly in the eye. "I accept your challenge," he said, his voice calm and steady, but with an undercurrent of steel that sent a chill down Rex's spine. The crowd erupted, cheers, whistles, and shouts of encouragement filled the air. The atmosphere had shifted dramatically, and no longer were they witnessing a one-sided humiliation. This was a challenge, a duel, a battle of wills. Rex, momentarily taken aback by the guard's unexpected response, quickly regained his composure. He smirked, confident in his superior fighting skills. "All right, then," he said, stepping forward. "Let's do this." He assumed a fighting stance, bouncing lightly on his feet, his eyes fixed on Sergeant Humphrey. The stage was set. The world was watching, and Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley, was about to learn a lesson he would never forget. The silence before the storm descended, heavy with anticipation. Beneath the stoic facade, Sergeant Alistair Humphrey was a complex individual, a man of duty and honor, but also a man with a hidden past. He wasn't just a ceremonial figure. He was a highly trained soldier with years of experience in close-quarters combat. Before joining the Royal Guard, he had served in active duty, participating in covert operations in some of the world's most dangerous regions. He possessed a lethal skill set, honed through rigorous training and real-world experience. He was proficient in various martial arts, including Krav Maga, Muay Thai, and Jiu-Jitsu. He was a master of disarming techniques, takedowns, and pressure point strikes. He could incapacitate an opponent in seconds, leaving them helpless and vulnerable. But he had chosen a different path, a path of service and tradition. He had joined the Royal Guard to honor his family's legacy, to uphold the values of his country, and to contribute to something larger than himself. He had embraced the discipline and the stoicism, finding a sense of purpose in the seemingly mundane routines of his duty. Now, however, his past was about to collide with his present. The skills he had buried deep within himself were about to be unleashed, not on a battlefield, but on the streets of London. In front of a crowd of curious onlookers, he felt a surge of adrenaline. A familiar sensation that he hadn't experienced in years. It was the feeling of being alive, of being tested, of being pushed to his limits. He knew that he had to be careful, that he couldn't afford to lose control. He had to subdue Rex quickly and efficiently, without causing any serious harm. He had to uphold the honor of the Royal Guard, while also minimizing the potential fallout from this unexpected confrontation. He thought of his grandfather, a decorated war hero who had instilled in him the values of courage, integrity, and self-sacrifice. He thought of his fellow guardsmen, who were watching him with a mixture of concern and pride. He thought of his country, which he had sworn to protect. He took another deep breath, focusing his mind, channeling his energy. He was no longer just Sergeant Alistair Humphrey, the stoic Royal Guard. He was a warrior, protector, a symbol of British strength and resilience. And he was about to show Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley, that appearances can be deceiving, and that true strength lies not in arrogance and bravado, but in discipline, composure, and unwavering commitment to duty. The moment of truth was at hand. The senior officer, Captain Davies, watched the unfolding drama with a grim expression. He was a seasoned veteran, a man who had seen his fair share of unexpected situations. He understood the delicate balance between upholding tradition and maintaining order, between protecting the image of the Royal Guard and allowing his men to defend their honor. He had initially hesitated to intervene, hoping that Rex would eventually tire of his antics and move on. But as the taunts escalated and the crowd's reaction turned hostile, Captain Davies realized that he had to act. The potential for a public relations disaster was growing with each passing moment. He considered his options. He could order Sergeant Humphrey to stand down, to ignore Rex's challenge and return to his post. But that would be seen as a sign of weakness, an admission of defeat. It would embolden Rex and further damage the reputation of the Royal Guard. He could also order Rex to be arrested for disorderly conduct, but that would likely escalate the situation, turning a minor incident into a major international incident. Rex was, after all, a celebrity, a high-profile figure with powerful connections. The only viable option, he concluded, was to allow Sergeant Humphrey to resolve the situation himself. Within reasonable bounds, of course. He couldn't authorize a full-blown brawl on the streets of London. But he could give Sergeant Humphrey the green light to use his training and experience to subdue Rex, To put an end to this humiliating charade, he knew that Sergeant Humphrey was more than capable of handling himself, that he had seen him in action during training exercises. Witnessing his skill and his precision, he trusted him to make the right decision, to use only the necessary force to neutralize the threat. He discreetly signaled to Sergeant Humphrey, a subtle nod that conveyed his authorization. He knew that Sergeant Humphrey understood the implications of the signal, the responsibility that came with it. He watched as Sergeant Humphrey squared his shoulders, his eyes narrowing slightly. He could see the determination in his face, the resolve to defend his honor and the honor of the Royal Guard. He knew that the next few moments would be critical, that the outcome of this unexpected confrontation would have far-reaching consequences. He could only hope that Sergeant Humphrey would be able to resolve the situation quickly and efficiently, without causing any lasting damage. The weight of responsibility settled heavily on his shoulders, that he was the one who had made the decision, the one who had authorized the use of force, and he would be the one held accountable for the consequences. The shift in Sergeant Humphrey's posture was subtle, almost imperceptible to the untrained eye. But to those who knew what to look for, it was a clear indication that something had changed. He squared his shoulders, his back straightening, his stance widening slightly. His eyes, previously fixed on Rex with unwavering stoicism, now seemed to focus, to sharpen. It was the stance of a soldier preparing for battle. A subtle but unmistakable signal that he was ready to engage. The crowd, sensing the change in atmosphere, fell silent. The cheers and jeers subsided, replaced by a hushed anticipation. They knew that the game was over, that the moment of truth had arrived. Rex, however, remained blissfully unaware. He was too caught up in his own arrogance, too confident in his superior fighting skills to notice the subtle cues that betrayed Sergeant Humphrey's transformation. He continued to bounce on his feet, shadowboxing and taunting his opponent, completely oblivious to the danger that lay before him. "All right, buddy," he sneered. "Let's see what you've got. Don't be shy. I promise I'll go easy on you." At first, he lunged forward, throwing a quick jab towards Sergeant Humphrey's face. It was a flashy move, designed to intimidate and disorient his opponent. But Sergeant Humphrey was unfazed. He had seen it all before, countless times. During his years of training and active duty, he calmly sidestepped the jab, his movements fluid and precise. He then executed a textbook close-quarters combat maneuver, a swift and decisive takedown that caught Rex completely off guard. It was a move that he had practiced countless times, a move that was designed to neutralize an opponent quickly and efficiently. It involved a combination of grappling techniques, pressure point strikes, and leverage, all executed with lightning-fast speed and precision. Rex, completely unprepared for the guard's agility and skill, found himself suddenly off balance. His feet swept out from under him. He flailed wildly, trying to regain his footing, but it was too late. He was going down. And he was going down hard. The stunned silence of the crowd was deafening. Rex, flat on his back, stared up at the sky in disbelief. The wind had been knocked out of him, both literally and figuratively. He couldn't believe what had just happened. Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley, the undisputed king of the UFC, had been taken down by a royal guard, a ceremonial figure he had dismissed as nothing more than a powerless mannequin. The impact had been jarring, the force of the takedown far greater than he had anticipated. He felt a sharp pain in his shoulder, a dull ache spreading through his back. He tried to sit up, but his limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. He looked around at the crowd, his eyes searching for answers, for some explanation of what had just transpired. But all he saw were faces filled with shock and disbelief. The cheers and jeers had vanished, replaced by a stunned silence that was almost deafening. His entourage rushed towards him, their faces etched with concern. They helped him to his feet, supporting him as he struggled to regain his balance. "Are you okay, Rex?" Barry, his manager, asked, his voice filled with anxiety. Rex shook his head, trying to clear the fog from his brain. What just happened?" he stammered. "He took you down, Rex." One of his entourage replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "He took you down hard." Rex glared at Sergeant Humphrey, who had resumed his post, standing ramrod straight. His face an impassive mask. He looked as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just single-handedly humiliated one of the most famous fighters in the world. The realization began to sink in. He had underestimated Sergeant Humphrey. He had underestimated the Royal Guard. He had underestimated the power of discipline, composure, and unwavering commitment to duty. He had allowed his arrogance to cloud his judgment, to blind him to the danger that lay before him. He had paid the price for his hubris, and he had paid it dearly. He knew that this incident would be replayed countless times, that it would be dissected and analyzed and mocked by the media and his rivals. That he knew that his reputation had taken a significant hit, that his image as an untouchable superstar had been tarnished. But as he stood there, bruised and humiliated, he also felt a grudging respect for Sergeant Humphrey, for his skill, his courage, and his unwavering commitment to his duty. He had been beaten, fair and square, by a man who had refused to be provoked, who had remained true to himself, even in the face of blatant disrespect. And in that moment the Rexing Ball Brawley began to understand that true strength lies not in arrogance and bravado, but in humility and respect. The learning curve was steep, and the lesson was painful. The silence that followed Rex's fall was heavy, thick with disbelief. The crowd, moments before, buzzing with anticipation, now stood frozen, their eyes wide with shock. They had witnessed the impossible. The seemingly invincible Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley, the king of the UFC, had been humbled by a royal guard, a symbol of tradition and stoicism. Sergeant Humphrey, seemingly unfazed by the takedown, calmly resumed his post, standing ramrod straight. His face an impassive mask, he looked as if nothing had happened, as if he hadn't just single-handedly silenced a crowd and shattered the ego of a world-renowned fighter. The only sound was the faint hum of traffic in the distance and the rustling of leaves in the nearby trees. It was a surreal scene. A moment frozen in time. Rex, still struggling to regain his composure, looked up at Sergeant Humphrey with a mixture of anger and bewilderment. He couldn't understand how he had been so easily defeated, how he had been outmaneuvered by a man who was supposedly just a ceremonial figure. That he tried to brush off the humiliation, to pretend that it was all just a joke, a playful sparring match that had gone slightly awry. But deep down, he knew that this was more than just a minor setback. This was a watershed moment, a turning point in his career. He attempted a weak smile, forcing a chuckle from his throat. "Okay, buddy," he said, his voice strained. "You got lucky. Let's go again." But the words rang hollow, lacking the confidence and swagger that had once characterized his every utterance. The crowd remained silent, unmoved by his attempt to regain control of the situation. Sergeant Humphrey, without a word, shifted his weight slightly, indicating that he was ready to engage again. Rex, sensing the guard's unwavering resolve, hesitated. He knew that another attack would likely result in another humiliating defeat. He looked at his entourage, their faces etched with concern and embarrassment. He knew that they were waiting for him to make a decision, to either continue the fight or concede defeat. He glanced around at the crowd, their eyes fixed on him, their expressions a mixture of curiosity and disdain. He knew that they were judging him, that they were waiting to see how he would respond to this unexpected turn of events. He took a deep breath, summoning his remaining reserves of pride. He swallowed it down, the bitter taste burning in his throat. He couldn't risk another defeat. Not in front of this crowd, not with the world watching. He had to salvage what he could, to minimize the damage to his reputation. He raised his hands in a gesture of surrender. All right, he said, his voice barely audible above the hum of traffic. "You win. I concede." The crowd erupted in a mixture of cheers and applause. They had witnessed a David and Goliath moment, a triumph of humility over arrogance, of discipline over bravado. They had seen the seemingly invincible Rex, the Rexing Ball, Brawley, brought down to earth by a man who had simply stood his ground, who had refused to be intimidated. Rex turned to Sergeant Humphrey, extending his hand in a gesture of respect. "Good fight," he said, his voice sincere. "You're tougher than you look." Sergeant Humphrey, after a moment's hesitation, accepted the handshake, his grip firm and steady. It was a brief but meaningful exchange, a symbol of mutual respect forged in the heat of battle. Rex turned to his entourage, his face a mask of forced cheerfulness. "Let's get out of here," he said. "I need a drink." As he walked away, supported by his entourage, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had just experienced something profound, something that would change him forever. He had come to London to promote his brand, to solidify his image as an untouchable superstar. But he was leaving with something far more valuable. A lesson in humility, a newfound respect for tradition and discipline, and a realization that true strength lies not in arrogance and bravado, but in the quiet confidence of a man who knows his duty and is prepared to defend it, no matter the cost. The video of the incident, of course, went viral within minutes. The world watched as the Rexing Ball Brawley was unceremoniously dumped on the pavement in front of Buckingham Palace. The memes were relentless, the jokes merciless. Rex became an instant laughingstock, a symbol of American arrogance humbled by British stoicism. His sponsors began to pull out, his rivals began to sharpen their knives, sensing an opportunity to capitalize on his misfortune. Back in the United States, Rex retreated to his secluded ranch in Montana, seeking refuge from the relentless media scrutiny. He shut himself off from the world, refusing to answer calls or respond to emails. He spent his days riding horses, tending to his cattle, and reflecting on the events that had transpired in London. He replayed the video of the incident countless times, analyzing his mistakes, trying to understand how he had allowed himself to be so easily humiliated. He realized that his arrogance had been his undoing, that his need for attention had blinded him to the true nature of the situation. He also began to appreciate the values of humility, discipline, and respect, values that he had previously dismissed as old-fashioned and irrelevant. He realized that true strength lies not in boasting and bravado, but in the quiet confidence of a man who knows his duty and is prepared to defend it. No matter the cost, he knew that he had a long road ahead of him, that he had to rebuild his reputation, to regain the trust of his fans and sponsors. He also knew that he had to change, to become a better fighter, a better person. He started training harder than ever, focusing on his weaknesses, honing his skills. He also began to study martial arts with a renewed sense of purpose, seeking to understand the underlying principles of discipline, respect, and self-control. He reached out to Sergeant Humphrey, sending him a letter of apology and a signed pair of boxing gloves. He didn't expect a response, but he felt that it was the right thing to do. He also began to speak out against bullying and disrespect, using his platform to promote the values of humility, tolerance, and understanding. He became an advocate for those who had been marginalized and oppressed. Meanwhile, back in London, Sergeant Humphrey became an overnight sensation. He was hailed as a national hero, a symbol of British stoicism and resilience. He received countless letters of appreciation from people all over the world, praising his courage, his discipline, and his unwavering commitment to duty. He was invited to appear on television shows, to give speeches, to receive awards. But he remained humble, deflecting the attention away from himself and towards the Royal Guard as an institution. He emphasized that he was simply doing his job, that he was simply upholding the traditions of the Royal Guard. He also used his newfound platform to promote the values of respect, tolerance, and understanding. He spoke out against bullying and disrespect, emphasizing the importance of treating others with kindness and compassion. He received Rex's letter of apology and the signed boxing gloves with a quiet sense of satisfaction. He appreciated the gesture, recognizing that Rex had undergone a profound transformation. He framed the letter and hung it in his office, as a reminder of the importance of humility and the power of redemption. He also kept the boxing gloves, using them as a training aid, a symbol of the unexpected encounter that had changed his life forever. Life eventually returned to normal for Sergeant Humphrey. He continued to serve in the Royal Guard, upholding the traditions of his country with unwavering commitment and dedication. But he never forgot the day that he faced Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley, in front of Buckingham Palace. It was a day that had tested his resolve, challenged his values, and ultimately transformed him into a symbol of British stoicism and resilience. And every time he stood guard, he carried with him the memory of that day, the lesson learned, and the enduring power of humility in the face of adversity. The slight, almost invisible smile returns a year past. Rex, after a long period of self-reflection and intense training, announced his return to the UFC. He had shed his old persona, his arrogance replaced by a quiet confidence, his boastfulness replaced by genuine humility. His first fight back was against a rising star, a young fighter eager to make a name for himself by defeating the once dominant Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley. The media hype was intense, the world watching to see if Rex had truly changed, if he was still the same arrogant fighter who had been humiliated in London. Rex entered the octagon with a newfound sense of purpose, his eyes focused, His demeanor calm and respectful, he shook hands with his opponent, wishing him luck. The fight was long and grueling, a back-and-forth battle that tested both fighters' skills and endurance. But in the end, it was Rex who emerged victorious, his superior technique and unwavering determination proving too much for his opponent. He didn't gloat. He didn't boast. He didn't taunt, he simply raised his hands in victory, acknowledging the crowd's cheers with a humble nod. After the fight, he was interviewed by a reporter, who asked him about his transformation, about the lessons he had learned in London. Rex smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. "I learned that true strength lies not in arrogance and bravado, but in humility, discipline, and respect," he said. "I learned that it's okay to be knocked down, as long as you get back up. And I learned that it's never too late to change, to become a better person." He then announced that he was donating a portion of his winnings to a charity that supports veterans and military families. The reporter, impressed by Rex's transformation, asked him if he had ever heard back from Sergeant Humphrey. Rex smiled. "I did," he said. "A few weeks ago, I received a package from London that it was a framed photograph of Sergeant Humphrey, standing guard in front of Buckingham Palace. On the back, he had written a simple message: 'Respect is earned, not demanded.'" Rex paused, his voice filled with emotion. "That message," he said, "is something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life." A few months later, Rex returned to London for another fight. This time, however, he made sure to show the proper respect for the local culture and traditions. He visited Buckingham Palace, paying his respects to the royal guard. He even attended a traditional British tea ceremony, politely sipping tea and making small talk with the other guests. Before the fight, he sent a signed pair of gloves to Sergeant Humphrey, along with a personal invitation to attend the event. Sergeant Humphrey, unable to attend due to his duties, sent Rex a message of support, wishing him good luck. Rex won the fight, once again demonstrating his newfound skills and humility. After the fight, he dedicated his victory to Sergeant Humphrey and the Royal Guard, acknowledging their unwavering commitment to duty and their enduring symbol of British strength and resilience. The crowd cheered, their voices filled with admiration and respect. They had witnessed not only a remarkable transformation, but also a powerful symbol of reconciliation and understanding. And as Rex stood in the center of the octagon, basking in the applause of the crowd, he knew that he had finally earned the respect that he had once so arrogantly demanded. He finally understood that true strength lies not in power and dominance, but in humility, respect, and the unwavering commitment to doing what is right. That he leaves the UK with a new perspective. Back in London, Sergeant Humphrey continued his service, his life forever changed by the viral moment. While Rex's journey was one of public transformation, Humphrey's was more internal. He found himself a reluctant celebrity, uncomfortable with the attention but committed to using his platform for good. He established a small foundation dedicated to supporting the families of fallen soldiers, channeling the donations and speaking engagements he received into a cause he deeply believed in. He continued to train, not just in combat, but also in de-escalation tactics and cultural sensitivity. He wanted to ensure that any future situation was handled with the utmost care and respect. He often reflected on the day he faced Rex, wondering what might have happened if Captain Davies hadn't given him the go-ahead. He knew that his actions had prevented a potential PR disaster, but he also recognized the inherent risks involved. He resolved to always prioritize diplomacy and restraint, using force only as a last resort. He received Rex's signed gloves with a mixture of amusement and respect. He knew that Rex's apology was partly a PR move, but he also sensed a genuine remorse, a sincere desire to make amends for his past actions. He decided to keep the gloves as a reminder of the importance of forgiveness and the power of transformation. He placed them in a display case in his office, alongside the framed letter from Rex, creating a small shrine to humility and redemption. One day, a young recruit approached Sergeant Humphrey, asking him about the incident with Rex. The recruit was eager to learn from his experience, to understand how he had managed to remain so calm and composed in the face of such blatant disrespect. Sergeant Humphrey smiled, a rare and genuine smile that reached his eyes. "It's all about discipline, lad," he said. "Discipline and respect. You must always remember to treat others with kindness and compassion, even when they don't deserve it." because you never know what they're going through, what demons they're battling. And you never know when you might be the one who needs a little bit of grace. The circle is now complete. And so, the story of Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley and Sergeant Alistair Humphrey became a legend. A tale told and retold. A reminder that even the most arrogant can be humbled, and that even the most stoic can inspire. It became a part of Royal Guard lore. A cautionary tale whispered among the ranks, a reminder that appearances can be deceiving and that true strength lies in discipline and composure. The spot in front of Buckingham Palace where the incident occurred became a minor tourist attraction, with visitors snapping photos and imagining the clash of cultures that had taken place there. And every year, on the anniversary of the event, a small group of people would gather at the spot, paying their respects to both Rex and Sergeant Humphrey, acknowledging the lessons they had learned and the transformations they had undergone. Some were UFC fans, eager to celebrate Rex's comeback and his newfound humility. Others were members of the Royal Guard, proud of Sergeant Humphrey's unwavering commitment to duty. And some were simply ordinary people, touched by the story of two men from different worlds who had found common ground through adversity and respect. The story spread beyond the UK and the US. A school in Japan used the story as a model for teaching children about respect and tolerance. The French government used the story to highlight the importance of cultural sensitivity when interacting with foreign visitors. A non-government organization in Africa used the story to spread the word about the importance of forgiveness and reconciliation. Even Captain Davies used the story in his lectures to his officers on how to de-escalate conflict. He would always end his lectures with the same words. A good officer knows when to use force. A great officer knows when not to. And so, the legacy of Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley and Sergeant Alistair Humphrey lived on, a testament to the enduring power of humility, respect, and the transformative potential of a single, unexpected moment. It truly became a moment that changed the world. Rex, watching the video message from his home in Montana, felt a surge of emotion. He had come a long way since that fateful day in London, and he owed it all to Sergeant Humphrey. He had taught him the importance of humility, the power of respect, and the transformative potential of a single, unexpected moment. He smiled. A genuine smile that reached his eyes. He had finally earned the respect that he had once so arrogantly demanded. And he knew that his journey was far from over. He still had much to learn, much to achieve, much to contribute to the world. The end? Or is it? Back in London, a new recruit was beginning his training as a Royal Guard. He was a young man, full of enthusiasm and determination, eager to uphold the traditions of his country. During his training, he heard the story of Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley and Sergeant Alistair Humphrey. He was inspired by Sergeant Humphrey's courage and his unwavering commitment to duty. He vowed to emulate Sergeant Humphrey's example, to always treat others with kindness and respect, and to always defend the honor of the Royal Guard. As he stood guard in front of Buckingham Palace, he couldn't help but think about the story of Rex and Sergeant Humphrey. He knew that he was now a part of that story, a link in a chain that stretched back through history. He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He was a Royal Guard, a symbol of British strength and resilience, and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The cycle begins again. Perhaps one day he too would face a cocky UFC fighter, eager to test his mettle. And perhaps one day he too would have the opportunity to teach the world a lesson about humility, respect, and the enduring power of the human spirit. The final image is of duty continuing on. Years turned into decades. The story of Rex and Humphrey faded from the immediate public consciousness, but it never truly disappeared. It became a part of the fabric of both the UFC and the Royal Guard, a reminder of the unexpected connections that can be forged between seemingly disparate worlds. Sergeant Humphrey eventually retired, spending his later years traveling the world, promoting his foundation, and spreading his message of respect and tolerance. He remained a humble and unassuming man, never seeking the spotlight, always deflecting the attention towards others. Rex continued to compete in the UFC, achieving even greater success than before. He became known not only for his fighting skills but also for his sportsmanship and his commitment to social causes. He never forgot the lessons he had learned in London, and he always made sure to show respect for his opponents and for the cultures he visited. One day, Rex received a message from Sergeant Humphrey, inviting him to attend a ceremony honoring him for his years of service. Rex immediately accepted, Clearing his schedule to make the trip to London at the ceremony, Rex and Sergeant Humphrey embraced, their reunion captured by the media and broadcast around the world. They spoke of the lessons they had learned from each other, of the importance of humility, respect, and forgiveness. The crowd cheered, their voices filled with admiration and gratitude. They had witnessed not only a remarkable transformation but also a powerful symbol of reconciliation and understanding. As Rex stood on the stage alongside Sergeant Humphrey, he realized that he had finally come full circle. He had started his journey as an arrogant and boastful fighter, seeking fame and fortune. But he had ended up as a humble and respected leader, using his platform to make a positive impact on the world. And it was all thanks to a royal guard, a stoic figure who had taught him the most valuable lesson of his life. That true strength lies not in power and dominance, but in humility, kindness, and the unwavering commitment to doing what is right. The overall theme is now clear and finished, and as the sun set over London, casting a golden glow on Buckingham Palace, a new generation of royal guards stood watch, their faces impassive, their commitment unwavering. They carried with them the legacy of Sergeant Alistair Humphrey, the story of Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley, and the enduring lessons of humility, respect, and the transformative power of a single unexpected moment. One of those guards, a young man barely out of his teens, stood a little straighter, remembering his own early days in that tale. His smile was slight, but it was there, thinking about the day that he too would have a tale to tell. Back in Montana, Rex looked out over his ranch, a sense of peace settling over him that he had come a long way from the arrogant fighter he once was. He had learned the importance of humility, the power of respect, and the transformative potential of a single, unexpected moment. He smiled, a genuine smile that reached his eyes. He was finally at peace with himself, with his past, and with his future. He had finally earned the respect that he had once so arrogantly demanded. And as he looked out over his ranch, he knew that his journey was far from over. He still had much to learn, much to achieve, much to contribute to the world. But he also knew that he was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. He had learned the most valuable lesson of his life, that true strength lies not in power and dominance, but in humility, kindness, and the unwavering commitment to doing what is right. He is now a new man in a new world. The story ends where it began, with a royal guard standing watch, a symbol of British strength and resilience, forever bound to the legend of Rex, the Rexing Ball Brawley, a reminder that even the most unlikely encounters can have a profound and lasting impact on the world. The cycle is complete. The end.